Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Jacob Restituto, and I'm a musician from Northport, New York. And today we have the absolute pleasure of having Sclafani here on the channel. He's worked on a ton of tracks, so I'm really looking forward to having this conversation and taking it where we go. And Chris, I really appreciate you for taking the time to come on the channel. And let you introduce yourself.
Sure. Yeah. Hi, I'm Sclafani. I'm a recording engineer, mixer, producer, musician, based in New York City, and I've been working in music probably about 12 years now, post college. And yeah, it's brought me to some pretty interesting places.
Are you born and raised in New York?
Yes, I grew up in Westchester County, so right outside New York.
Very cool. I'm
So,
also a New York native, born and raised, and still live on Long Island.
yes. Nice.
Very cool, man. So I'd love to hear a little bit of your origin story of, first of all, kind of some of the things you've done in music, but also how you got there in that process. I know that you went to Fredonia University, phenomenal music school there. I have a couple of good friends that went to that school as well.
Nice.
So I'd love to hear your story there and what made you kind of decide in going into music and how your family felt about that. All the details, man, as far back as you want to go.
Sure, yeah. Well, I suppose my story starts like so many others, in high school, playing in a band with friends.
Hmm.
At the time I was playing guitar, I was playing bass a lot, so that was my bread and butter. And after playing in the basement or in your friend's garage for so long, you all kind of look at each other and go, "We got to record." It's like, okay, how do we do that? So you start out with a little tape cassette recorder and maybe a little 4-channel mixer, and you still don't know what you're doing. And I was lucky that at that time, at that age, I was 13, I think, when I really started getting into that. I was still in middle school, really. That a lot of my friends felt similarly, that had the same desires. So we all learned together.
Hmm.
One guy would buy a microphone, and we'd all go, "Oh God, okay, what is it? How do we use it? Put it on everything." And you quickly learn maybe we didn't need to put it on that, or let's try something a little different. But it was a nice little community of friends
Hmm.
who were willing to experiment, because they had the same interests. So groups of friends playing music, getting to record each other as practice, not only
Hmm.
yourself but each other. We graduated to a 12-track digital, this Korg. It was the D1200. It was called. It had 12 little faders and had reverb and compression, everything built in, and we didn't know how to use any of it. But you collect enough random microphones, nothing special, and you start making music that way. And that first time that you hit play after recording something and listening
Yeah.
back, this, oh my God, like that's us. Like we just did that. Like we just made a record,
You feel like a rock star already.
yeah, there's something about, press and play and
Yeah.
listening back to what you've been doing, at a young, impressionable age like that.
Hmm.
Friends with that hype, doing something you love. And, I was lucky because I discovered really early on that that's what I wanted to do with my life.
Hmm.
um, there was kind of no question at a certain point. It was even before I entered high school. I kind of had this like epiphany moment one night laying in bed. I was just like, I have to do music. I have to work in music. In what capacity? I'm not entirely sure yet. But I like playing and I like listening, and I'm obsessed with the sounds on these records. And I
Hmm.
was listening to a lot of Led Zeppelin and the Beatles and Jimi Hendrix and Ozzy Osbourne. So classic rock, but it just sounded so cool to me, and to be able to get lost in that was really exciting. Uh, then to be able to recreate that with friends was even more exciting. So
Yeah.
you're kind of like, where's the ceiling on this? Like we just, let's keep going. So recording was that next step, and you quickly learn, you don't know what you're doing when you're trying to record songs that have been recorded. You're like, they recorded these songs 40 years ago. Ours are going to sound great. We
Oh
got this
yeah,
cool
baby.
little digital mixer. Like this is going to be and then you listen. You're like, we're terrible. And that's the first step, though, of okay, well, why is it terrible? Let's figure this out.
Hmm.
Let's have fun. I was lucky. At an early age, I had that kind of energy, um, about all things music and the recording aspect of it specifically. So yeah, I think we were a little more serious about it than we should have been at that time, but it
Hey, you
led to
know
some
what? The obviously paid off. So to some degree, one
yeah,
way or another, right?
it led to some cool places. So
Yeah,
why
for
not?
sure. So then you
So
get to
that was
college, right? And then
yeah.
how did your family feel about you, like wanting to do music? Do you have any musicians in your family, or are you kind of the first to kind of take that step?
No, I'm the first to take that step for sure. But they were very supportive. My
Hmm.
family, parents were both uh, principals, English
Hmm.
teachers, working in the school system. And I said, I want to do music, and they were like, okay. They weren't exactly sure how to help, but they were supportive, which
Hmm.
was really all you could ask for. And that's really all you can give a 13, 14-year-old kid anyway, is support.
Sure.
So yeah, I found Fredonia at a certain point in high school, once the whole college conversation had to happen, and I noticed that they had a recording program
Hmm.
there, pretty good one, an old one as well. It was one of the first few in the country ever, from back in the 70s, and they're still going strong. So that was the obvious choice for me. So I went there. I studied sound recording as my primary major, and then as a double major in classical guitar performance. Um, I didn't have any desire after college to become a classical guitarist, but everything I was learning there in that environment, it felt so important. Even if I didn't
Hmm.
know for what, I just knew that being in that environment of, I'm the student, I need to soak in everything I possibly can, you know, besides the recording stuff. I knew it was important, so I stuck with it, and I had a really great teacher, classical guitar professor Jim Perkowski, who kind of was very inspiring as a teacher. It was almost fun
Hmm.
when you were unprepared. It's always a little more fun when you're prepared, but even when you're unprepared, you're like, it's still going to be an okay lesson, I think. And that kind of sparked this teaching something in me, like
Hmm.
awoke, like, oh, you can sit with somebody, with a performer, with an artist, with a producer, and have a discussion about where things should go or how things should happen, which translated later on into studios when you're producing with people,
Yeah.
whether it's vocal production
Hmm.
or instrumental, or just discussing with an artist, the vision of a project.
Yeah.
So all of that, became very useful to me later on down the road. So I'm really happy I stuck with it. Um, but sound recording was my main thing in school, and I ate it up. I loved it. Some of it's a little dry, still is, but that's just the nature of
Yeah.
technology, and but yeah, it was
Yeah,
pretty
man,
fun.
it's really interesting. Just to piggyback on a couple of things that you had spoken about. First of all, the parallels in our stories are actually oddly similar. Around the age of 13, I started recording my own tracks, and fell in love with the process of writing and recording. Went to music school as well. I went to Aaron Copland in Queens College, but I ended up dropping out to do music full time. But it's just interesting, man. And even the aspect of like taking lessons. I mean, my instrument of choice in school was piano, but I do not miss showing up to a piano practice unprepared, man.
It's
Now my
brutal.
teacher did not make it as fun when I was unprepared. Let's just say that. But
Yeah.
it's amazing, man. And I even piggybacking on what you're saying, some of the technical stuff that can be a little dry. I think it's interesting, kind of just as a caveat. I think that sometimes people think that when you do what you love, and I love what I do, again, to make music and have conversations, all this stuff. I love what I do. There are, even in that, still little things that are like, oh, this is a little dry. This is a little, I don't really want to do this specific thing, but it just kind of comes with the territory. I'd much rather have 90% that I enjoy doing and the 10% that I don't, than the 10% that I actually do and the 90% that I don't.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. And you find that in everyday things. Every day when you come
100%.
in, there's something you're kind of dreading, like,
Yeah.
all right, I guess I should tune this vocal now, when you
Yeah.
sit there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very
I
much
know.
relate to that. Yes, for sure, man. So
That's just,
piggybacking on from Fredonia,
mhm.
how do you go from a college student to then working with a ton of, I mean, you yourself have 14 number one Billboard, I guess tracks that were number one on Billboard, and then I think how many Grammy nominations? Is it 12 Grammy nomination tracks?
No, no, three nominations, one win,
Okay.
and then there's some UK official
Okay.
charts numbers as well from things over there.
So how do we go from college student to that? Because I like to say for a lot of my goals for these conversations is my intended audience, intended demographic is artists and musicians, anybody that wants to join the music industry, essentially, that was told that it's not possible to do anything in the career because it's so hard and it's impossible to break through. And I like having these conversations and hearing these stories where obviously, you've had tremendous success and how you got there to inspire other people to be like, oh, it actually is possible. There are real faces behind the names on the, the credits and stuff. Like, it's actually possible to make a career. So what's that story look like?
Well, once I graduated college, I was looking for an internship somewhere in New York City because I live close by, and I was on Gear Space now, and I saw Downtown Music Studios looking for fresh blood intern, cleaning, and I'm just like, all right, great, that's the start. So I sent a message. I said, I'm graduating from school, recording, all that. I want to join the workforce, so to speak.
Yeah.
So they wrote back and said, great, okay, come on in tomorrow, come downtown and we'll meet you. And I said, okay. So living upstate at that point, it takes us an hour or so to get in. I park down in Soho in the expensive parking garage because that's all that exists down there. And I sit outside the studio and I'm waiting for the call to come in and like meet people. And it never happens. So I'm sitting out there for a couple hours, and then the guy that I'm, in contact with is like, today's not a good day. Can you come back tomorrow? I'm like, yeah, I'll come back tomorrow. All right. So get in the car, head home, come back.
You're what, like 22 at this time, just out of college?
Yeah, 22.
Okay.
Yeah, and I wanted it, which is a big part of it. And at that age, you have the time, you have the energy, do it. So I came back, and then I met the guy that I'd been corresponding with, and he brought me up to the studio. And my first couple of days was just running around town, picking up people's food, making sure that the bathrooms were stocked and there was coffee in the machine. And I was like, okay, I was like, this is the first step. Like, I made it. There was this little closet that's where you lived. And when you were in my position, you were not seen or heard, nothing, and it was kind of a wild ride. But after that, I ended up getting into a room as an assistant engineer rather quickly because somebody above left. And the boss came to me one day and said, I've only known you 2 weeks. I don't know what you know, but we have a session tomorrow and I need an assistant. And so, let's just come in and let's see if you can do what I say. So, okay. Yeah. So like a little test. And it was simple stuff. We would pull up Pro Tools, get some routing together, patch-based stuff. Hook this microphone to the Neve and then the CL1B, and then go into Pro Tools and say, well, okay. And that went well enough for the next day to be an assistant engineer. So I kind of a little bit, only having done the GA stuff for maybe 2 or 3 weeks before getting into a room. And my first session was with Benny Blanco. And, I had just come out of school that was very classically, everything was very, very heavily influenced in that style of music because that's what people were performing and studying. So I was like, the name kind of sounds familiar. I don't know who he is, whatever. Now looking back, it's kind of silly. It's like, oh, he was a pretty big deal, still is. So I didn't let that get me nervous, but the session went well. And then over time at Downtown, I had become more of an assistant engineer than anything else, than the G position. So assisting a lot of sessions and learning that you have no control of your time or anything in that position. If you really want to do that, you kind of got to give up a lot to be in the position. You're going to get a phone call in the morning, be here in an hour.
Yep.
Okay. I bought a real alarm clock when I first like actually got the gig, because one day my phone didn't go off as an alarm. And I'm getting called by the boss, like, where are you, man? Like the session's gonna start. Like you're supposed to be here. And I'm like, oh my God, my phone didn't go off. And he's like, if that happens again, like you're done. Like that's it. I'm never calling you again. Went out, bought a real alarm clock, had an actual time I got up every day to check texts, to make sure. But it was pretty extreme being an assistant engineer in New York City. Like sometimes we'd go weeks with no days off at all. I'd bring my laundry in a duffel bag and not like hide it in the closet. And then when the session was going, everything was super chill. I'd run out. I'd run 2 blocks down to the laundromat. And I'd throw my clothes in and put all the quarters in, and then run back to the studio, pretend like it happened. 45 minutes later, I got to duck out. Does anyone need anything? You want Gatorade? No, okay. Run on down the block, which I'm over to the dryers. Like it was like that for a long, long time.
It's honestly truly amazing. Just like so in these conversations that I've had doing these interviews, man, I really admire, because while everybody's story is very different, there are so many core themes in so many people's stories that actually, that build something of their career. And I think that so many people want to skip steps and be like, oh, okay, I just graduated college, let me work with Maroon 5, I want to mix Maroon 5, whatever. But like there's so many steps that you have to be, like so many people that I've spoken to, like that are in positions like you are now, clean toilets, or be it you only did it for 3 weeks, but still,
well, I still had to do it. There's a skeleton crew there.
But it's the case though, and you kind of the humility to start at the bottom, and then being lifted up from there, you know what I mean? Rather than like shooting for the top and like nobody really, like, you're not qualified for the top, and nobody really wants to work with that guy that's hot-headed, thinks he's, the best thing since sliced bread, but the guy that's willing to get the coffee and clean the bathrooms, I think, speaks volumes. And then if your quality of workmanship can back it up, there's nothing better than that.
Right. Yeah. And I think that helped a lot, because once you are in the room with people, you need to understand how to read the room, learn your place in the room. And as an assistant engineer, it's better than an intern.
Yeah.
But not by a whole lot. It's really just, oh, you're the intern in the room now, basically. You get to touch gear, but you're just setting it up. Still a lot of customer service.
Sure. So what's the next step in the story? So you assistant engineer, kind of like patching things, set up microphones, working with Benny Blanco as an assistant engineer in the studio. So what is that? Where do you go from there?
Yeah, so Benny would come in once a month for a couple of days, and I always looked forward to those sessions because after 1 or 2 times working with him, I became like his guy. So when he would book the rooms, he'd say, I want Chris, as my assistant. And it's like, okay, great. So we developed a relationship that way. I was there about 1.5 years, maybe a little over 1.5 years. So I'd worked with Benny a handful of times. And at one point I got an email from him like, hey, I go to LA every winter for a couple of months and I need someone now. Do you want to be that guy? Do you want to like be my engineer? And so I was like, yes, I do. So he hired me as his engineer and assistant. So it was like this dual-edged, like, oh, I'm
like
still
personal assistant kind of thing.
I'm a personal assistant, but I'm engineering everything too. So when we're in the studio, like I'm the guy, I'm in the chair, like I'm calling like some shots. But outside of the room, it's like, all right, let me make sure he's got his doctor's appointment lined up. Let me run and get some food real quick, So that was interesting. So it was a graduation, but it was like a little step up.
I love that more, though.
More things were added. But it was still like similar.
But even in that, though, I think so many people kind of, to some degree, like the ability to be flexible. I think that so many people are one-track minded and say, no, I only want to do, for example, mixing. And then you miss out on a huge opportunity because, again, you don't have the humility necessarily also do the personal assistant, pick up the guy's laundry or order his food or make sure he gets to his doctor's appointment. It's this balance of saying yes to certain things and saying no to other things. But, so even that, in itself is a really cool part of your story.
Yeah, I mean, by that point, I guess I was about 24, 23, 24, 25. So I still had that whole, like, whatever I got to do, like, I'm going to do. it's funny because sometimes I feel like that hurt me a little bit because
Mm.
I didn't always speak up. I didn't want to step on anyone's toes, you know? Like I knew my place in the room. I knew the hierarchy. I was at the bottom and I was fine with that. But at the same time, I didn't really express myself as sometimes even a person or as a musician or as a producer. And I was right there. I should have.
Mm.
So looking back, sometimes I'm like, damn, maybe I should have been a little more outgoing in certain
Yeah.
situations. You know, when I was the engineer, I was like, all right, I know my role. Just got to make this shit sound good. Like,
Yeah.
this is what it's going to be. And, you know, an artist walks into a room and it's a bunch of people, everyone's having a good time. And then I'm just sitting there quiet, like, hey, yeah. You know, like at the keyboard, like rating. And I'm just like, you know, like a buzzkill. Like, what was I doing with my life?
Mm.
But I was there and I was experiencing it in my own way. But looking back sometimes, it's interesting thinking, what if I just acted like one of the guys, like everybody else did?
Mm.
You know, what if I was more like comfortable or assertive in within myself? Because I really loved the idea of mixing. I wanted to mix, and Benny knew that. But I was going to be mixing any of that stuff we were working on. I mean, I was sending that to Servant. I was sending that to Spike. You know, I'm
Yeah.
not. So I just never really brought it up. I never
Mm.
did it and went, hey, look at what I did. You know, I could have done that 100 times, and maybe one time they would have been like, it's not bad, and the rest would have been terrible. But I would have been doing it. You know.
Yeah, or even getting feedback like, oh, you know, like maybe next time try this, maybe next time try that, even if they don't use your mix. Yeah, that's actually a really interesting hindsight that could be helpful for anybody listening. You know, in the sense of like, you don't be afraid. Of course, know your place, but like also don't be afraid to, you know, in the right opportunity, speak up.
Right? Yeah. Show your
Yeah,
personality.
yeah, yeah, for sure,
Is
man.
that's another big part of why you're there and someone's not. I mean, luck
Yeah,
has a little
man.
bit to do with it. There's luck and time kind of cross each other. It's like you have to be in the right time at the right place. That doesn't guarantee, you know, something steady.
Mm-hmm.
You being you and you presenting the work you do and being the person you are, that's what's going to keep you there.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
I
you
think a
have
lot
one.
of it. I'm sorry, continue.
Oh, I was just going to kind of keep spiraling off of that
No,
thought.
but I think that a lot of it is in addition to like, you know, the luck and serendipity of things and timing of things, what keeps it sustainable I think is two things. One, your work ethic, you know, if you have the work ethic to maintain it, but also that I think the work ethic creates those opportunities. And two, your EQ, your emotional intelligence. I think that, you know, the ability to read the room, the ability to become friendly with people and people like you, you're much more likely to have more luck or opportunity come to you as opposed to if people think you're a jerk or boring or anything. You know, you don't have to be a jerk not to get jobs. You could just be boring and not get jobs, you
Totally.
know.
I've been boring. I know it.
So you're in LA at the time. You're the PA to Benny Blanco, but also his engineer in the studio. Like, where does that go from there? This is, I guess, you know, based on what you graduated, I think in 2011. I saw. So this would
Yeah,
probably be 2013.
yeah, 2013. He started his own record label, Mad Love Records, and Friends Keep Secrets. So he started signing acts.
Hmm.
You know, worked with this British band, Rixton. They were a lot of fun working with those guys. Just a band of musicians who they all sang. They were all talented guys. Um, People like Jessie Ware, who's like out there still crushing it. Man, she's just blowing at my feet lately. It's amazing. Um, that was like the 2013 era, and that was leaning towards building his empire. Like, you know, it
Hmm.
was five of us, and I was like the technical guy. You know, anything that had to do with recording or the studio or instruments, prepping, tuning, anything like that was my jurisdiction. So we started experimenting with bringing equipment around to people's houses, you know, building a little mobile rack and saying, how much work could we get done? You know, would it be feasible? Could we do a record with a little rack of gear? And that expanded into going on tour with artists.
Hmm.
So for Ed Sheeran's album Divide, a lot of that was recorded on a tour bus. You know, it was Benny, Ed, myself, and then Ed's cousin who made a documentary about it. The documentary is called
Mm-hmm. I
Murray.
watched that documentary. Yeah.
Yeah, so you see it. The first scene is
So
us on the bus.
Well, I didn't recognize you at the time, so I was literally just about to say that. I want to go back now and see if I see you in the footage. I guess you
Yeah,
apparently are.
I have a little more hair and
It's
a
wild.
little more weight as well. Because the camera adds what, like 50 pounds? I
Exactly. Oh man.
So yeah,
Yeah,
that
I'm
first
actually
scene is
130
something.
pounds in real life. It's just everybody think, you know.
Living the dream.
I'm sorry, continue. So I'm just now from my own curiosity, and as a, somebody that makes my own music, I am super curious to know what was on that rig, that touring rig. What did you
It
what
was
was your bare
nothing.
bones? What did you
It
keep?
was nothing crazy. We had a 47, beautiful. I mean, we had beautiful gear. All right, it wasn't like we were like taking 57s out of our pockets and
Yeah,
like we had
yeah.
beautiful
Oh,
gear.
that's so unbelievably relatable, that comment, man. That I bet you said it because you've done it. Exactly. 57's out of the
We've been
pocket,
there,
man. 100%.
all.
That is so funny. So the U-47.
We had a U-47 going into. I think we were using a Neve 1066 at the time, preamp, little EQ. Didn't do much by way of EQing because we were bouncing around different. We were either on the bus with the engine on, or in a green room, or in a bathroom at a stadium. So we had the 47 going into the Neve, into the CL1B. And over time, over the years, some of that would get swapped out for something else. Like the CL1B was replaced by a CL2A, which is a really similar compressor from TubeTech.
Mm.
So that now gives us two channels of compression instead of just the one, these little refinements. And then we were using the UA Twin for a long time as an interface. So we were
Mm-hmm.
going into that. We had two channels, and that's all we really needed at first. Eventually, it expanded out into, you know, a big road case with hydraulics that opened up with speakers built in that had a Juno 60.
Come on, man. That's
I
crazy.
mean, so it evolved over time, but really, it was a microphone, a preamp, a compressor, and then our laptop
Mm.
using a UA Twin.
Are you still this is a I want to pause where we are and just ask another technical question. I noticed in your studio and some of the things that I did a little research on, and also kind of in what you're referencing now, are you still using a lot of out of the box gear or in the box gear? Did you move in the box at some point?
It depends on what the situation is. I always like having an analog front end. So when recording, I'm going through outboard gear. I'm going through a preamp and a compressor, at least. Then, into tools. I'm using Pro Tools. Mixing or producing things out, it's mostly in the box, unless there's something that I can't quite get. I have a bunch of guitar pedals and some of them sound wonky, and I don't know if that's how they're supposed to sound, but I like it.
Yeah.
So there are times where I'll be like, you know what, let me grab that guitar I got from somebody and I'm going to throw it through my pedal. Maybe I'll reamp it too,
Yeah,
through
yeah,
my
yeah,
amp.
yeah.
It's mostly in the box with very specific instances of going out and coming right back in,
Yeah.
because recallability when mixing something or working on a production with somebody, it's instantaneous.
Yeah.
We're in the box,
Yeah.
everything's right there. So if I do end up going out of the box at any time, I print it back in, so I have that.
Yeah.
But with recording, always try to hit some gear before
Mm.
going to tape, for sure.
Would you consider that your personal taste or an industry standard, or how do you what are things looking like these days?
I would say that's pretty typical industry standard. Whenever we go to any studios,
Mm.
and I'm talking, it could be Jungle City or Electric Lady or Record Plant or Abbey Road, we're always recording with front end.
Mm.
There's always preamps and compressors going to tape. We're capturing our sound, and we're shaping everything before it gets into the computer. So by the time it's in there, it already sounds great. Like, it's
Going to
beautiful.
tape before it even gets to the analog. You're saying? I'm sorry,
Oh,
before it gets to
oh,
digital.
sorry. Tape as in the recording medium. So Pro Tools.
Oh, I thought you were
Sometimes
also.
I'll just
Yeah,
tape.
yeah.
I'll
Okay,
just
sorry. Yeah,
going to tape. I don't know why. I don't
yeah,
work that
yeah.
much on tape.
Well, because I know that the Chili Peppers just recorded. I mean, maybe 6 months ago or last summer or whatever. But their album was all on tape. So I was like, oh wow, he's recording it. So
Oh, recording to tape is a good time. We have a machine here, a 24 track Atari, and a couple of months ago, it kind of just, like, I'd say maybe like a mini explosion. It was just kind of like, and a couple All right, babe. Dog's sleeping.
Yeah, yeah.
And, all the lights kind of blinked, and then it started making a very ominous noise. So shut it down. Haven't used it in a couple of
Yeah.
months. But yeah, going to tape is a whole other
Yeah,
experience.
yeah.
That is something where you really need to understand your front end. Because once it hits tape, depending on what you're doing after it, of course, there's always time for manipulation.
Yeah.
But you want to capture the best possible sound you can going in.
Yeah, for sure.
And, Pro Tools, tape,
It's a
any of
lot
them.
harder to fix it in post with tape.
If you screw that up,
Yeah, becomes expensive real quick
yeah, it does.
and time consuming. So I apologize. That was my personal tangent question. Just as somebody that, as a gearhead myself, I was curious. So you're on the bus now with Ed Sheeran and Benny Blanco and his cousin, or Ed's cousin, recording everything. What does the day to day look like at that, and where do you go from there?
Well, the day to day was it was really interesting because even though we were on tour and we were, I think, up in Canada at that point, we went up to Montreal. We started in Montreal. And then worked our way towards Toronto, and then came back down into the States. Every day was kind of the same. You wake up, don't really know where you are because you've been sleeping on a bus, which is very relaxing. It's the best sleep I ever get is on a tour bus because
I can't tell if that's sarcasm or if that's serious.
No, it's amazing. It's super comfortable.
That's so counter everything I've ever. I've heard like tour life is the hardest thing ever. So I'm really curious about that.
I'm doing it, 2 weeks at a time. If
Okay,
you're doing
okay,
it once on a time, then my personal experience is great. You got a little air vent there. You get your blanket. You close
a little
your
cocoon.
It's brilliant, and it's the low hum of the road.
Yeah.
Along. So it was great.
Granted, you're also probably touring. In the A-list tour of tours. At that time,
exactly.
It's not a white van. That you're 12 guys are shoveling in with Dorito chips. But still.
That's why I said my experience was great.
Yeah. No, I love that, man. Hey, that's the dream, bro. That's the dream. 100%. I love that. That's awesome.
But we would unload from the bus and set up in whatever green room was available. Sometimes in those big hockey arenas, the green room, it's the dressing room with the bathroom behind you.
Yeah.
And there's no way to close it off. And these are bathrooms made for 30 guys. They're
huge tile room. Yeah.
Caverns.
Yeah.
So sometimes you can hear a little bit of that happening in the background when you solo the vocals on some of those records.
Wild, man. I love that. See, like that's the cool part about it though, is like I think that especially, like the more and more I'd learn and talk, like is the more and more I actually get away from this perfectionist idea. When I was first recording my tracks, dude, I recorded a guitar take once, like on my first couple of songs. I think it was like 97 takes to get the perfect take. You know what I mean? And now, first of all, like nobody's really ever heard the song. Maybe it has like 12 views, because it's like my first thing ever. And secondly, like nobody would have cared if it was slightly out of time here. Like it's so interesting to see, like, in these, A-list tracks, just how imperfect they actually are, and it's freeing to some degree, actually, because you don't have to be perfect to make this, phenomenal song.
Right. I used to think the same way. I was like, everything had to be perfect.
Yeah.
And that actually started taking away from the music.
100%. It's so wild.
You're sitting there, oh, I got this great part. I just want to get it onto the computer the way I hear it in my head. And then an hour later, the part isn't happening. You're like, oh my God, what am I doing with my life? And then everything starts falling.
Oh, it's so relatable, man. It hurts. I hear you.
So now my philosophy is the emotional performance is always more important than the technical act. I mean, of course, you can argue depending on what the part is or how it's played, the technique of the instrument. But as long as you get a good performance out of somebody, whether it's a singer or a guitar player, you can work with that because that's real.
Yeah.
If you need to tune a note or two, you can. And that's going to be okay because the emotion is there. I don't have a plugin where I could turn the emotion up, make it feel like the singer felt something.
Yeah.
I don't have a plugin, But I can tune a note if they were really going for something and it's a little bit flat. That's no problem.
So true, bro. It's so true, man.
So my philosophy definitely flipped at some point. Like, oh, I'm freaking out about things that don't actually matter.
Mm,
That the important things serve the song, and then everything else is kind of can fall off to the wayside. That's
yeah.
okay. So yeah, there's definitely some background noise in a lot of records I've done that are okay that no
Yeah.
one can't even hear, unless you have the solo you solo the tracks.
Yeah,
So
when there's 57 other, tracks and there were 100 other tracks, people like, don't hear that soloed little, but
and
so
then that's stuff too. Sometimes I'm listening to music, from listening
yeah,
to Zeppelin or something, and I hear a noise in the background. I'm like, oh man,
yeah,
they screwed up too.
yeah,
Great. Like it doesn't.
exactly. And people at this point are listening to music in their cars and on the on their phone speakers. So like, is the sound even in in the recording, or is it just on the road as they're driving 85 miles an hour? You know what I mean? Like,
But the
who's really listening? Yes, 100%.
emotion.
Yes,
So that's gotta be ever present.
yes,
You
a
in a
hundred percent, man. So working with Benny as an again as his engineer, then continue fast forward to where you are now, working with art, many artists and and stuff as with mixing, correct? So like,
yeah.
what does that transition look like? How do you take that leap out of because it's a pretty comfortable gig, working. I mean, Ed was and still is well, and on your list is some really huge artist names that you've worked with Benny, and so what brought that leap out, onto your own and as your own building your own name.
Well, there were a couple of things. After about 3 years with Benny, I knew that I needed a change.
Mm,
I couldn't really quite explain it, but I had been doing that, and it was great and it was fun. But something needed to change. At that same time, he made the decision to become a West Coaster full time, to no longer really live in New York full time. And I didn't want to do that. So it was a little serendipitous at the time. He's
yeah.
like, we're coming out to LA. And I'm like, I'm going to stay here.
I was actually going to ask about that. That was one of my questions is why New York and not LA? And have you found that more difficult being as a New, because typical music scene is often seen as LA. Of course there's a lot going on in New York, but I'm curious your opinion on that.
Well, family, one of them.
Sure.
I
Absolutely.
was dating my now wife. We were dating back then. And she was going to school in Boston at a piano tech school. She works for Steinway and Sons now as a piano technician and a recording engineer
Mm,
herself. We were spending 5 months apart, in the
yeah.
winters when I was
Yeah.
out there. So, and that was hard. I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
Also, there were little things about LA that turned me off just a bit. And that's just like personal experience. Like nobody had a license. Like on my team, my group of people, nobody had a license but me. So
To
now I'm
drive.
driving
Yeah.
so I'm just stuck in a car behind the wheel every day. And it's like record plant is 7 miles away and it takes us 45 minutes to
Yeah.
get there
Ugh,
on average. Like
I hear you, man. I
that's a
hear you.
bit of a
And also, as a
so
native New Yorker, culturally, LA is very different.
it's
The
different.
couple of times that I've been out there, it's a very different experience. I like my wear your heart on your sleeve New York vibe a little bit more
I'm
than
fine with that. And I
yeah,
like seasons. I don't
yeah,
mind the
yeah,
cold so
yeah,
much. The weather out there, yes, I know it's beautiful. Everybody tells me we've all experienced it. But it just didn't feel like home. It didn't
yeah.
really feel it felt more like a stopping point, not a settling point.
Mm,
And I was maybe 28 or 27 or 28 when this move was happening, where Benny's like, I'm moving out there. And then I decided to stay. Lauren, my wife, and I had just moved in together. We have a place, in the city, and we love it. Um, and that was home, and I was
mm,
working, so I had both things. The argument could be made, well, if I went to LA, I could have more work. Maybe I would be more successful, or maybe I'd still be working with that team, and we'd be doing X, Y, Z. But I mean, come on, anybody could have those thoughts
a
at any
hundred
time.
percent. There's no
They
point in
can get
those.
they can get destructive
Yeah, for
quickly.
sure. Very.
So you kind of have to take a step back and say, whoa, what is success for me? What is happiness for me? That might not necessarily mean
Yeah,
working with
100%.
the biggest artist all of the time. And that's something that I like to ask myself every now and then. I check in on myself. I say, what is my happiness? Like,
Yeah.
what is success to me? Is everything okay? And the answer is yes, everything's okay, even though I have to fight myself, to get to that answer sometimes. Um,
Yeah,
so it was back then.
it's so easy to get caught up in like the day to day. I think that's phenomenal. Like, and a really great point of like just the checking in with what, like, having specific mission statements of what you want to do and what makes you happy, and why you set out to do what you do. And then because it's so easy to get caught up in the day to day and lose that, and kind of be like, well, why am I unhappy? Oh, well, it's actually because I'm not doing what I want to do. Yeah, I might be making more money or look more successful, but it's not at the core what I want to do.
Right, exactly. So you really need to define your life for
Yeah,
yourself,
yeah, yeah,
for your sanity.
yeah, for
Really.
sure, man.
So I stayed in New York. I'd still go out and do some work every now and then. With Ben, he'd call me up, say, "Hey, can you come out here and vocal produce Camila Cabello for a day?" All right. Label's buying my flights, no problem.
Yeah.
I'm ready to go. Fly out. You work together for a day, have a nice dinner, like it's a nice little reunion, and then at 1 a.m. I'm taking off, heading back home. And I land 8 a.m. and I'm back home.
Yeah.
Start to the day in New York. So I did that for a couple of years after as well, and I didn't mind doing that at all because I got to be home and I got to work. Um, Shortly after the permanent move to New York was decided, I found a room which I'm currently sitting in right now, in Midtown Manhattan. So I rent this room from somebody I met when I was about 15 years old. He's an older guy. He's a jingle writer. He did "Every Kiss Begins with K."
Did he write? He wrote that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's wild. Yeah.
Well, he's got this spot, and we reconnected. He's like, "Hey, Chris, my guy is on vacation, but I need a mix done for AMC. He works with commercials and movies." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." I come into his spot, catch up with him. It's nice. I walk into this room, which is in the back, and it's just like trash. It's just garbage. It's like a broken table, broken chairs, boxes. And I'm like, "Hey, man, if I clean this out, you make it look real nice, can I pay you rent? Like, can I use this room? Because this be my room." And he was like, "Absolutely. Great." So I've been here for about 6 years now, and it's my little sanctuary. I get to leave my apartment, travel down to Midtown, which is the worst, but that's okay because I have this, and
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
get to,
Yeah.
and every day here is a little different, which is nice too. So it could be mixing, it could be writing sessions, it could be teaching. I teach private lessons out of here. I have people
Oh, wow.
come, and if someone's like, "Oh, I'm having an issue, I can't get my guitar to sound good, my acoustic guitar, no matter what I do." So it's like, "All right, bring your guitar, bring your mic, and we're gonna set it up in here. We're gonna
Wow,
try
man.
different, and we'll do it all in real time to help people get a better understanding of how they can capture great sounds
Yeah.
with what they have, because it's not hard. It's really not hard anymore. You just have to be willing to experiment. So yeah, forget how I jumped all the way to that.
No, but yeah, I mean, that was kind of like the follow up question to like, how did you get to where you are at, current the day to day of today? So yeah,
Well,
that's, so the day to day is you working on, mix, like you said, mixes, and you also give lessons and stuff. And are you working with that jingle guy, or like how does that work? Is that just now the space you live in?
no, this is just the space I live in now.
Yeah.
Every now and then he's got some clients come in that they need a mix for something, so I hop into his room and I'll mix a children's TV show,
Yeah.
for a day. Like, that's the day then. I mean,
Yeah.
that doesn't happen all the time, but it's just another thing that kind of keeps me going. Like, oh, that's going to
Yeah.
be fun. It's different. It's interesting. So little things like that come in all the time, and then having the space to be able to decompress, but also to create and to call your own, I think is really important from a mental standpoint as well.
Mm.
There was a few years where I was in my apartment, just working out of my apartment before I had this room, and that was really difficult. It was tough to kind of get out of that headspace of, "Oh, I'm home. I'm
Mm.
working from home meant something different then. That was before 2020.
For sure.
It was like, "Oh, I have nowhere to go, but I'm gonna do something home."
Yeah.
Like this enclosed space. So getting the studio, getting somewhere to go, to get out of not only my home but my own head is really important. Um, and every day could be a little bit different,
Yeah.
which is beautiful.
No, that's the beauty of it, man. I love it. And like you said, like just having your own little spot where it's like where you show up every day, and you're comfortable in the space, but also you're creative in the space is a really 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 important thing.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
because sometimes, I'm sure there are times that you're like, I haven't written anything
oh
in
gosh, I hear you.
weeks. Like, what is wrong with me? Like, I see your setup. Like, you got this sweet setup right there. How hard is it to just sit and play? It's a little harder than you might.
Yeah, man, 100%.
Finding,
I thought you were calling me out there when you said, I have.
finding the time to do
Yeah,
something.
100%, man. It's so
Sure.
true. It's so true. So I wanna be respectful of your time, but I also want to wrap it up with some more questions about just your thoughts on the music industry at the moment and stuff. And I'm curious to hear your opinion on like the modern, as somebody that that's worked on these very large tracks and very well known tracks, or however you want to define it. The world of TikTok and what that's looking like with these bedroom producers and these tracks that are going viral. What are your thoughts on like the mixing industry and how that works, and like these people, including like we're all trying to put our tracks out on TikTok, right? And just your generalized thoughts on it, man.
Well, I have to admit, I don't have TikTok.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm interesting enough to have TikTok. No one really
Oh, that's
cares.
not true, man. You got some great stories. You're a good storyteller, so I'm sure you could even tell stories right on it.
Oh, it seems like a lot for me. It's funny because some artists thrive, some
Sure,
producers
sure, 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 sure.
love it, and they put out some quality things because it's important, looking at it from the outside, outsider being someone younger or outsider being someone who wants to be more successful at a certain, thing. Um, to see somebody who thrives doing that, who enjoys doing that, I think that's a really positive, outcome.
Yeah.
But you also have so many people who are uncomfortable doing things like that. Like me, like I don't want to do that. But like, is that the only way that we're going to be able to be successful? Is if we have TikTok? Is if we pour our energy into that? I'd rather pour my energy into creating something or sitting with somebody else's music and helping them bring it to the next level.
Yeah.
So I'm always a little torn about thinking about how TikTok is either helping or hurting. It go both ways. I think if you have it within you, if it's something you enjoy and you love doing, you like creating that content, then that can help a lot of people.
Sure.
Because you could see that we're doing stuff, we're also having fun. That's kind of what this is about, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, isn't that why we all did it? That's all why we all started doing it.
It's true, man. Keeping the
But
authenticity to yourself, because that's the best. Like that. As soon as you stop being authentic, is when the fun gets sucked out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you have to really try to do it, it might not be very authentic and it might not be very enjoyable. So I think knowing yourself, you kind of listen to your art there. Like, I might.
For sure, man. Now, another selfish question about gear. I'm curious, just on this, of course, a personal taste, and what works for you might not work for somebody else, and vice versa. But what are some of your typical go-to pieces of gear? Like, what are some things you love? Actually, I want to follow up with that with a second question. What are your go-tos, and what are something that isn't necessarily a go-to yet, but you're loving it these days?
Oh, interesting. We'll go to as far as recording, tracking.
Sure.
I love, my mic chain that I got. I have this beautiful Neumann CMV 563 from the early 60s with an M7 capsule, and it's just glorious, and I got it probably 8 or 9 years ago, before they started getting more expensive. I think people caught on that it was the same capsule as the U47. So that going into a TG2 is my mic pre of choice into a CL. I have the CL2A, so I have the dual channel version of CL1B. It's not exactly the same. It's not a stereo CMB. It's slightly different, but still a beautiful compressor. Anytime that I can capture something using that gear, I know that it's going to sound the way I want it to sound.
Starting place, yeah.
Yeah,
Which is
exactly.
very similar to the gear that you were using on tour with Ed and Benny.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And
cool.
a lot back then it was a lot of kind of like mixing and matching, like, oh yeah, we have a 47, but we also
Yeah,
have this, a C800 and
yeah,
like a Manly Gold Ref. So it was kind of like people don't really care to do mic shootouts unless you come from that like engineering or like you're interested in the tech
yeah, yeah,
part.
yeah,
Like, I'm not going to ask Ed to sit there and sing the same thing in the
yeah,
four
yeah,
different.
yeah, yeah.
Listen back and be like, this one's the bet. No one cares. But when you have the opportunity to kind of swap something out for a
Yeah.
day and kind of get the feeling of it, it's good to know um, that wherever you go, if you have a job at another studio for a
Mm,
day, or
yeah,
do something, you know your options. You've
yeah,
heard these things before and you've experienced them.
yeah.
Plugin wise, I mean, Fab Filter, UAD, Sound Toys, those things are kind of
Sound Toys
all
make some
over.
cool stuff, man.
They're kind of like all over everything
Yeah.
because they're brilliant. Yeah, the Fab Filter stuff, the Q3, dynamic compression, built in, like everything all in one. You can. It's a beautiful plugin. I
Mm.
don't know. Do you use
The Fab
the Fab
filters?
Filter?
You know what? No, I was literally just thinking to myself, man, I think I got to get on the Fab filter because, like, typically when I ask somebody that question, almost always their answer is Fab filter. And, like,
It's
at this point, it's like, okay, I think I got the message at this point. Yeah.
it's just good stuff. You know,
Yeah.
once you use it and you start
Yeah.
seeing what it can do, you have to think less
Mm.
because okay, now I understand this piece of equipment now. Like I know what I want and I know how to get it.
Yeah.
And it just always seems to work out
Yeah.
when I pull up the Fab Filter plugin. So very happy with that. The UAD stuff is phenomenal. I recently did an experiment. I recorded some drums, but went directly into my interface, a quad, a UAD quad, and used the plugins as my preamps and compressors and EQs instead of actual outboard gear.
Mm-hmm.
This was like a test for me because usually I said earlier I'm a front end guy. It's always got. So I did a little experimenting, and I gotta say it was pretty sweet. So having console come up, and you got
Yeah.
like the 1073 preamp, and maybe the 1081 EQ, and then an 1176, and being able to mix and match for everything, and then hearing this monstrous
Yeah.
drum sound and be like, "Damn, I'm not using any preamps, like
Yeah,
no outboard
it's like
gear."
it's a blessing and a curse. I feel like though because the blessing is you can get any sound you want, and the curse
Mhm.
is you can get any sound you want. So
Exactly.
when do you stop? Like you can maybe a little bit more adjust the knee on the compressor. Like you can't do that once it's tracked on a outboard gear, and that's kind of the beauty of it to some degree. It's like it makes you commit. It's almost like songwriting. It's like I've been trying to write more in pen lately, in
Mhm.
a notebook, pen in a notebook.
Yeah,
Because
that's what I.
writing on a phone, it's great. You could write more ideas, but like there's less commitment to it, and there's something about like the creativity of committing to something. I don't know. It's just interesting. I don't know if it's just nostalgia or if it's actual legitimacy, but
Well, it could be everything. It could
yeah,
be all the reasons above. I mean, it helps lift part of the weight
yeah,
of the process
yeah.
because in your mind, you now checked something off. Oh, that sounds
Mm.
good. Okay, we're done with the sound. Now
Mm.
let's move on.
That's
There's
very
no,
interesting.
there's nothing going on in the back of your head the whole time. Like, I'm gonna have to fix that later. Okay, well, I'll pull
That's
up an EQ
very
when we.
interesting. Yeah, man, I
And
hear that. I relate to that. I
there's
relate.
sometimes the more you listen to something, the better it sounds.
Yeah.
Because that's how our ears work. So by the end of the day, you committed something
Mm.
to tools, and you're listening back. You go, this sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. 100%,
So
man. So again want to be respectful of your time. So I want to conclude with a question I like to ask all my guests and say, what is something you know now in your career that you wish you knew when you first started off?
okay,
Oh, you did a little prep work. Did you hear this question? Did you make it to the end of a couple of? I know before we started, we were talking about the fact that you watched a couple of the interviews before. And did you see this question at the
oh
end?
yeah, I saw the question, and I thought, and I went, man, that question makes me realize that I still don't know anything. But after a little more
That's
thinking,
funny, man.
I kind of touched on it a little bit earlier on by mistake, of course. We were just flowing, and um, it was about defining success for yourself
Sure.
and being happy. Uh, There is another part to that, another answer to that question that I think falls more with the producer, engineer, mixer person, and that's be open to everything. And I mean that from genres of music. Listen to something you don't normally listen to, or something that you've told yourself you didn't like. Maybe you were having a bad day, so you're like, oh, I'm not going to listen to one. So no, listen to it, because so many people get so much joy from music that songs I've never heard, or songs that I've heard and I don't really like. Why though? So if you keep yourself open and not turn anything down or not look at anything in a negative light, it's a lot easier to start letting the things in that you do enjoy. It's like, maybe I'm listening to a country song. You know, I'm not really a country fan. I didn't really grow up listening to it. Maybe I'm listening to it and I go, damn, those drums sound stellar though.
Yeah,
I can enjoy this song. I can enjoy, who produced this? I can enjoy this person's production now. Who mixed this? All because I let myself enjoy something.
Yeah.
That I previously would be like, that's not my thing. It's like, shut up. It's everyone's thing.
Yeah.
It's like,
there's always something to find. There's always something
exactly.
good to talk about. Yeah, for sure, man.
Exactly. So stay open, and the genre of music or a plugin or a recording technique. You know, I've seen people come into studios and kind of talk behind the engineer's back, like, why would he do that? Like, why would the engineer record it like that? And it's just like, well, he's got like 30 years experience on you, dude. Like, maybe he's doing that for a reason. You know, try to learn from watching people. Sometimes you're going to learn what not to do.
For sure.
And that's okay too. I learned a lot of things not to do. And that's okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it's still learning.
Yeah.
So I guess soak it up, soak it all up, and make sure you're happy.
It's true, man. It's true. It's sad with how many people are unhappy. So I completely agree with that. But I really appreciate you taking the time, man. If you could hang out for 30 more seconds, I just want to say, first of all, big thank you to you, and then also a big thank you to everybody that watches these interviews and made it to the end of this interview. Specifically thanking you as the listener and the viewer. You guys are the true ones. You guys give me the opportunity to do what I enjoy. So thank you very much. Best way to support the channel is checking out my own original music and subscribing or following wherever you listen, as well as going and checking out all the stuff that Chris is up to these days as well. All his links and everything, all his information will be down in the description below. So Chris, thank you again. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
And I'm looking forward to seeing what you keep up with and do, man.
Excellent, man. Yeah, me too. Good times.
For sure. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. God bless and peace out.